We live. Not yet. Okay, we are live. Greetings and salutations. Good evening. Those of you all who are here, those of you all who are coming in, those of you all who are watching it later. Hold on, let me mute this. Okay, there we go. Um, how y'all doing? How y'all been? Um, we're gonna jump right into this. I made some changes. I looked at the video last week and I was like, there's a delay in my audio. That was pissing me off. So I corrected the delay and hopefully this is better. I think it is better because I tested it. We'll see when I look back at it. And it was kind of dry in here when I was listening to it. So I'm like, I want some music. And those of you all who know me, I'm a house head. So it's going to be house music each and every time. Thanks to YouTube. Shout out to this new DJ I found on Facebook. I mean, it's on YouTube. He has some fire mixes. He has some fire mixes. So I'm gonna be pumping him in the background, real low key. So there at least be some, ambient noise going on around here. Anyway, um, how'd y'all enjoy last week? How'd you all? What was your? Give me some feedback on the kind of content that I provided. Good to hear from you to see how it's going. I'm gonna do this whole series anyway, but it's good to get some feedback to see how it's being received. Okay, so today I am jumping into chapter 3 of the book His Leadership, Her Trust, and previously on His Leadership, Her Trust. For those of you all who did not watch the first episode, go back and watch it, please. But you have the marriage organization. I discussed in chapter 1 the marriage organization, and I talked about the difference between a group and an organization. A group is defined by two or more people that perceive that there is unity among one another, and then they also are acting in a unified way towards society. So that's what's considered a group, and then an organization, which sometimes is used interchangeably. The organization is the same thing as a group, but it has two additional features. It has a common goal that they're all pursuing, and it has different roles and responsibilities that lead toward that common goal. So each of the members of that organization have different roles and responsibilities that lead toward that common goal. And so, what does this have to do with relationships and the interactions therein? Some relationships are structured like a group, and some relationships are structured like an organization. Oh no, I don't want this. Okay, so we're gonna have ads in these. I can't have ads in these. It's not good. Um, but some organizations, some relationships are structured like an organization. Why does this matter? Because it determines, based upon the structure of the group, whether it be group or organization, determines of how one another interacts with each other. So, for example, in a group organization, you have two or more people that are unified together, and there's perceived unity. But then there's no common goal. There's no, this is what we're doing. There's no, we're going to be moving toward this direction. And then because there's no common goal, there are no differences in roles and responsibilities toward that common goal. So you may be in a relationship that's structured like a group. However, you also may be in a relationship that's structured like an organization. An organization has two or more people that are unified. It has the common goal, and it has the different roles and responsibilities. I mentioned this. I forgot to mention this last week. But the twain can exist. The two can exist. People can be in one relationship, but you have a group. One person thinks they're in a group, and one person thinks they're in an organizationally structured relationship. There was an example of a couple that we worked with years and years and years ago. When we first started. We'll call them Kenny, and we'll call her Pam. They were married. Kenny was in the military. Pam was, worked locally. I think she was let's say she was a teacher. But she did not really like the military all that much. She wanted Kenny to get out of the military, but Kenny was interested in staying and becoming an officer. because he went to school and all that stuff. So they discussed it and they said that, yeah, okay, I'm going to be, I'll consider getting out after my, 10-year term. And so when he got 10 years came to pass, he got stationed abroad, and he got stationed in a location where she could not come because it was just the security of that location prohibited her from coming. So Kenny was like, I'm staying. I'm gonna go ahead and stay in and do my last tour, and then I'll consider leaving after that. Well, after and he became an officer and so forth. After Kenny tour was up, it was time for him to come back home, and Pam was like, okay, so like you said, we're coming back. You're coming back home, and we're gonna go ahead and start this family and do all these things. Well, he was like, yeah, no, I'm not coming back home. As a matter of fact, I'm going to another location, but this location, the spouses can come. So Pam was like, okay, well then I guess I'm coming to you, and I guess I'll live there, and we'll work this thing out since you want to stay in the military. And Kenny was like, no, I don't think I want you to come. She was like, he was like, I'm good. I'm good. I think I'll just stay there. And Pam was like, what are we gonna do? And Kenny was like, let's talk about that later. And later became later and later and later and later. 3 years later, Pam ended up filing for divorce because what was discovered was that Kenny was just was happy over there in the military life doing his officer stuff, and he was getting that military spousal pay while living single. But Pam was like, I'm done with this. What does that mean? That in Pam's mind, she was in an organizationally structured marriage because there was a common goal. They were going to work toward it. In Kenny's mind, he was not in a organizationally structured marriage. He was in a group, meaning I'm just going to do what I want and I'm going to do it, and even if I say I'm going to do something, I'm really not going to do it. I never had intention on doing it. And so we kind of worked with Pam to try to help her through that. It was very, very, very tough for her. But that was an example of how two people can be in one relationship, but then they still have two different perceptions of organizational structure. So to explain this group organizational dynamic from a biblical standpoint, we first went to Genesis chapter 1, and we discussed what Genesis described as the male and the female and the creation thereof. And then we talked about the different roles and the different goals, the common goal that God gave mankind. And he told mankind to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, subdue it, meaning to control it, and then to have dominion or rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the heavens, and over every living thing that moved on the earth. Subdue, we talked about meaning control, meaning to tread down and to make subservient, to bring something that's wild or chaotic into proper order. And so that was the goal, one of the goals that God gave mankind. The third goal was to have dominion, which means to rule, to reign, to provide governance, provide order and structure. That's what that process was. That's what he wanted mankind to do for that. I'm gonna just do this right here. Um, so he wanted mankind to do that, to have rule over the earth. And we talked about why God wanted mankind to do that, because he had thrown in the Revelations, I think chapter 12, Satan got kicked out of heaven and he went down to earth. But he also wanted, in Psalms 115, he wanted mankind to take over the earth. And so he sent mankind down to the earth so that he can take it back over from Satan. But we know what happened with that. He messed up, sin. Jesus had to come in, fix all that. So that's why he wanted mankind to control and have dominion over the earth. And so God's goals, then he had different roles and responsibilities that led toward that goal. So organizationally structured relationships have different roles and responsibilities, like I mentioned. And man's role was to fill the earth. His role with that, his goal was to fill the earth. His role to that was to impregnate the seed, or impregnate the seed. And the woman's role was to carry the seed and birth a child. That was to fill the earth goal. The subdue and dominion goal, The man's role on that, based upon Genesis 2:12 through 25, was to um, work the land and take care of it. And the female's role was to be a suitable helper. And that's what we discussed last week about the different roles and responsibilities that were assigned to the man and to the woman. Now, this was all before man and woman became, well, the goal was given to mankind before man and woman became flesh. It wasn't until after they became flesh that he assigned these roles and responsibilities. Um, so marriage, and what we talked about last week was marriage does not operate like a group. God designed marriage to operate like an organization. And we compare the two. We talked about organization has two or more people, and a marriage has two or more people, meaning that you may have children or just maybe the two of you. A organization has common goals and purposes. A marriage has a common goal or purpose, or common, which is to fill, subdue, and rule. And we're going to be talking a lot about fill, subduing, and ruling throughout today and in the next few chapters. So you're going to hear that a lot. God's common goal is to fill, subdue, and rule. And then the organization has different roles and responsibilities. And we talked about the man's role and responsibility. The man's role was to work the land and take care of it. And the woman's role was to be a suitable helper. And so in summary, those are the differences. So we moved on to chapter 2. In chapter 2, we talked about the definition of what leadership is. I talked about the 100 years of history that the study of leadership has taken place, and all the different definitions that happened throughout the decades. And there were 4 themes that seemed to come up in all of those decades, from the 1920s to the 2000s. When I was doing my research, 2000 teens, when I was doing my research. And those themes, there was 4 themes. There was a process that included more than one step, meaning that there was multiple things that you had to do. It wasn't just something that you do one time. Leadership's not something you do one time and then it's over. There was a process of there was a group of people, meaning that there was more than one person, and that there was movement of that group to a common outcome. And then there was a specific goal that this group had to achieve. So those are the 4 different themes. And so this definition that I found by Ralph Stockdale, he's a great leadership teacher. He had the definition which said that leadership is the process of influencing the movement of a group toward a particular outcome. And so that's going to be our working definition for leadership as we move forward. We also talked about this very, very important point, that leadership only exists inside of an organization. It does not exist outside of another organization. Because once you step outside of that organization, your leadership is nullified. We talked about a football team. I played football in high school, and my coach was Coach Straub, and he was the leader of our football team. Our rivalry was a friend of mine that I grew up with. He went to a different high school down the street, and he had a different coach. Now, his coach was the leader of his football team. Now, if Coach Straub were to go over to Wheaton High School's football team and start barking orders and telling them what to do, there'd be some problems. The same thing, I'm a Cowboys fan, and I live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So if the coach of the Cowboys would start coming over to the Commanders' football practice and telling them what to do, there would be a breach of, there'd be some hands thrown, because leadership does not exist outside of the organization that you're in. Think about it. If you have a church, your pastor is the pastor of your church. Let him go outside of his church and start giving orders to another church or telling another church what they should or should not do. There's going to be some problems. And we talked about in marriage, how a husband, I am a leader in my household. But if I come into another person's household and start telling them what to do, or telling their wife what to do, or telling their children what to do, I'm not going to be acknowledged, because I'm not a leader. I'm not recognized in their household. And I talked about how that's why I think back then when I wrote the book, men really did not like therapists going to therapy, because it was somebody that was outside of their organization coming into their organization and telling them what to do. And the old adage of, I don't want people all of my business, that was a good use. That was a term used to explain why they did not want someone outside of their organization speaking to their issues inside of the organization. You have to be inside the organization in order for leadership to exist. Outside the organization, leadership is nullified. Um, so we also discussed 5 things that leadership is not. This was real good. If y'all didn't, uh, if you want the details of this, go back and watch the video. But 5 things leadership is not. Leadership is not character specific, meaning you can have any quality of character, a horrible person, a great person, and you can still be a leader. Because a leader does not, the qualities and the attributes of your leadership do not define whether you are a leader or not. Like I said, a leadership is defined by those 4 themes. The process of influencing the movement of a group toward a particular outcome. That is what leadership is. So anybody that provides that, whether you are a good person or a bad person, as evidenced by what's going on in the government today, you are the leader. You're providing leadership. Leadership is not person specific, meaning that anybody can be the leader. Just because you are the one that has been given authority to make decisions, you've been the one given authority to supervise or move, be a boss, or be a husband, or be a lead, or be a parent, does not mean that you are the person that's leading. Authority is not leadership. Authority is not leadership. It means leadership is authority is something that has been assigned to you to make decisions and carry a level of responsibility to enact and move things and get things done. That does not mean that you are the one influencing the group. I talked about how if I pick a basketball team, if I pick a basketball game of 5, and you have I have my 4, and I got next and I got my 4, so I have the authority to pick the 4 members of my basketball team, and then we'll go on the basketball court and we'll start playing. What's up, Renee? How are you doing? But then if the person that's on my team is a better player than me, and everybody starts listening to that person and starts going or doing what they say, that person actually is the leader. Although I have the authority to pick the team, I'm not the leader. And then last week we talked about leadership is not direction specific. No matter which direction the company is going, no matter which direction the success of the company is going, or the success of the leadership is going, that it doesn't matter, because you're still a leader if you're no matter what direction you're going. We talked about leadership is not outcome specific. If you are a Jalen Hurts, or if you are Patrick Mahomes in last year's Super Bowl, if you are the quarterback and you were leading the team, then you are the leader. It doesn't matter if you won or lost the Super Bowl, you still were the leader whether you won or lost. And then leadership is not purpose specific, meaning whatever genre, whatever arena that you're in, leadership exists there. So it doesn't matter if you are a business person, if you are a teacher, if you are a police officer. If we are providing leadership in an area, that leadership is there. And so we talked about, I made the point, I wanted to make the point that wherever there is an organization, leadership must be present. Wherever there's an organization, leadership must be present. Because think about it, if you have different roles and different responsibilities, and you have a common goal that you're working toward, somebody is providing leadership toward that common goal. Somebody's doing it. So if there's an organization, then leadership must be present. That means if there is no organization, then there is no leadership present. And I said that because some people think that they are leading when they don't have a common goal. And if you do not have a common goal, then no leadership is present. You are just doing your own thing, and the other person is just doing their own thing. So that is why I wanted to make that point clear. So that's a catch up on what we talked about last week. So this week, today, what time we got? That was a long 20 minutes. Wow. We're going to talk about leadership in marriage. Leadership in marriage. This is going to be good. I'm going to reference some stories in my book. In the 3rd chapter, I talk about a couple who Well, I talk about a small group that I was hosting over at my house years and years ago. There's a group of men, and one of the guys who we'll call Trey. These are not their names, and I've changed the details of the story enough so that nobody's information is being shared. But we'll call Trey. He was lamenting about his marriage to his wife, Paula, who we'll call Paula. Paula and Trey had been married for 12 years. They had 3 kids. And he was talking about some problems they were having. And so after some probing, I was able to understand that their marriage was structured like a group. There were no goals, therefore there were no common goals that they had together, and there was no role or responsibility that they had toward that common goal. So they were just strictly operating as a group. And let me read from my book, my description of what was going on in their marriage. I said, since I'm on page number 54. I said, since they didn't have these common goals or to pursue, they didn't have defined roles or responsibilities in their relationships. Each person did whatever they felt necessary at the time according to their own understanding and individual preferences. Because these two critical pieces of their relationship were missing, there was no leadership. There was no leadership in their marriage. As a result, their individual decisions were causing major problems for the past 9 years of their 12-year marriage. For the past 9 years, that's 2/3 of their marriage, where they were having major problems. They disagreed on everything from the finances to family priorities to the amount of time spent at work. Intimacy, sex, quality time, out of the question. Communication, only when there were issues concerning the children or to coordinate their schedules. So this was something that they were struggling with throughout the whole of their marriage, pretty much the whole of their marriage. And that was specifically because they did not have a organizationally structured marriage, because their marriage was structured as a group. So let me ask a question to the peoples. Do you know someone in the group that in a group structured relationship like Trey and Paula? Are you familiar with somebody like that? And I'm not asking because I want to throw some shade on them or make it seem like we're better than them. I'm asking because I want to know if you can identify a group structured relationship versus an organizationally structured relationship. Because if you can identify the difference, then hopefully you'll be able to identify one, if you're in one, and what to do if you're in one. Well, I talk about what to do if you're in one. And two, if you're like in a talking stage and you're entering possibly a group relationship, if that's what you if you want an organizationally structured relationship, you need to know that, okay, you're entering into a group style relationship, or maybe that's what you want, and you don't want a organizationally structured relationship. You want to stay in a group, but you can see if the language that your mate is using is kind of spinning it to more sort of like a sort of an organizationally structured relationship, and you don't want that. Then you know how you need to move. You need to how you need to control things, and then like I said, lastly, to control the direction of that relationship. So if you're having a organizationally structured discussion, but you want to keep it as a group, then you need to move yourself differently. And if you are in a group style situation and you want to move in an organizationally structured marriage, then you need to have some conversations. Renee, you said my circle seems to be in good marriages. Yeah, same here. Same here. I think at this big age, well, that's not true. At this big age, people are kind of locked in, but I do know some people who were locked in, but they are unlocked now. Praise the Lord. Okay. So, but yeah, let me know if put it in the comments if you know people that are in group structured or organizationally structured relationships. So now we're going to look at leadership in marriage, and we're going to start at the common goal. So let us talk about the difference between the task-oriented goals versus the purpose-oriented goals. I have to differentiate between the two because there are differences in the way that a task-oriented goal is perceived and a purpose-oriented goal is perceived. Um, okay, so a task-oriented goal is something like what I have listed here. You're going to the grocery store. Yeah, you've agreed that okay, we're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to going to paint a room. You're going to pay a bill. You're going to run some errands. You're going to take the kids to daycare. You're going to cook some dinner. These are all goals that you have in your marriage. Things that you do, things that you do throughout your marriage, but they're not really purpose-oriented goal. They're kind of task-oriented goal. Purpose-oriented goal is eh, deciding if you want to have a baby, and if you want to have a baby, do you want to adopt or not? You want to start a business as a family. You want to buy a house. You want to go back to school. You want to become debt free and establishing family values and a culture within your family. Um, someone someone's task oriented goals might be another person's purpose oriented goals. This is something that I learned after the fact, after I wrote the book. Um, when I was writing the book, I was able to see clearly the difference between the two. But then I learned this because when we were doing our Millennial Dating Chronicles, like I mentioned in the last episode, Millennial Dating Chronicles is a web series that we did when we interviewed millennials and they just talked about their dating experience. And one of the couples asked, what is the difference between compromising and settling? The difference between compromising and settling. And I was like, ooh, that's a good question. And so off the spot, I just came out. I was like, the difference is one is behaviorally based and one is values based. So if you're compromising, then you are making adjustments to the behavior that you're doing, something specifically that you're doing. So let's say, for example, paying a bill. Paying a bill is a task-oriented goal, as you see. If you want me, like, I'll take perfectly my example. When I went back to grad school, I used to do the bills, but I could not do the bills and study in grad school at the same time. I was in an accelerated program. Our grad school was a 1 year long. We had we had a class twice a week for 4 hours from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And it was a 5 week long class. Then we had a test, and then we went to another class. It was crazy. It was really good. I learned a lot. I learned about leadership, but I did not have the bandwidth to do the bills. So Bernie took over the bills. So that was a task oriented goal. It wasn't like a compromise that she had to compromise her values. It was just something that she did. Um, uh, she took over the bill. She didn't want to do it, and I was like, yeah, I can't do it. And then when I graduated, I was like, yeah, I really, I don't want to do it anymore anyway. So why don't you continue to do it? She was like, when are you gonna take the bills back? I'm like, I don't want to. She's like, that's not fair. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to take the bills back. You're doing such a great job. So she kept the bills. Um, and another example of that is if it's a purpose oriented goal to pay the bills. Let's say you have the bill paying strategy of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Or let's say you like to have a nice allowance of expendable income that you want to do fun stuff with. Well, if you have a purpose oriented goal to becoming debt free, or you have a purpose oriented goal to like pay off to save money for a business, by somebody having a very loose and cavalier expenditure style with money, that may be a violation to you, and you may feel like it is settling. You may feel like something is being compromised in your soul, and that may be something that you really need to address. And that goes to another thing that I learned after I wrote this book that speaks to the need for the financial, what I call the 5 areas of security in a relationship. And there's 5 areas. There's the financial of security, physical security, emotional security, relational security, and spiritual security. And so the physical security is feeling safe and secure or free from harm of anything physical that may happen or in you and around you within your relationship. There's a need that people have for physical security. You want to be nothing that no decisions that are being made or things that are done are physically harming you. That's physical security. Financial security is the same thing, but financially, you have financial security if the decisions that are made or the things that are done in the marriage do not harm you financially. Emotional security, which I think is the most important one, is are the things you're doing, are the decisions that you are making physically harming me emotionally? Um, if that is the case, then there's a need for someone to find some security, some safety in that emotional space inside the context of their marriage. And then there's relational security. Are the decisions that you're making, are the things that you're doing threatening or jeopardizing our marriage, our relationship? I mean, is this going to cause us to like have a breach that we cannot get past? Are the are the are the things you're doing with other people causing us to actually might get a divorce? And I'm not just talking about cheating. I'm talking about the time you spend with your family versus me, the way that you prioritize other people over me. Woo! Ah, that's a big one. That's a big one. That's a big one. And then lastly, spiritual security. Are the things you're doing spiritually harming me? Are they going to affect me? And if is there security around your spiritual decisions? Do you think everything is so super duper spiritual that you have us in these crazy type churches and stuff? Renee, you said don't miss those days. I'm I'm pregnant with my youngest in grad school. Oh yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. That's even harder going through grad school with child. Um, but yeah, so the security that's associated with that, um, are they causing you to have a little bit of, not a little bit, a lot of bit of angst or something like that? So those five areas of security, if there is a task oriented goal like paying bills that's causing you to feel unsafe financially, that may be a purpose oriented goal that might need to be addressed at a higher level. And if that is the case, and I don't talk about it in the book, so I'll just address it now, then you need to have a discussion, a renegotiation of sorts of some things that if you feel like there's a breach in any one of those any one of those security areas, physical, financial, emotional, relational, or spiritual, you need to have a meeting to discuss and renegotiate what the process, steps, system will be concerning that area going forward. And you need to make it we're not moving past this issue um, until we have a resolution that we're both cool with. There's some issues that are not on the level where, well, let's agree to disagree. There are some ways that you can compromise in the process, but you need to have a very strong conversation about that. That's one of the things that I do with the clients that we have. Um, there was on several occasions, because they can't get past the issue and there's a lot of conflict in the communication during that issue. I would just mediate that conversation to try to teach them how you can have conflict in communication, but not be combative. Because you don't need to have combative conflict or combative communication and conflict. So what I'll do is I'll let them have a discussion about, let's say, finances. We're talking about that. Talk about money, and let's say you want that person to stop being loose with the money, and you want to have them pay bills on time. They'll have the conversation, and then I'll ask questions. So what do you think about that? And how do you feel about that point that your spouse is making? Oh, well, I think it's, cool, but, I just need her to do so and so and so and so. And then I'll say, so are you saying that you want her to do so and so and so and so? Yes, I do. Okay, ask her to do that. Okay, will you do so and so and so and so? Well, you got to do this first. So are you saying that you would do it under certain conditions? Yeah. Okay, then counter his proposal. And I'll just have them go back and forth until they come up with a resolution. And then I'll say, okay, now issue a declaration. what, as a result of all this conversation, we are going to do what now? And I want them to articulate what it is they're going to do. And I was like, see, we can have this conversation without it being combative. And I'm trying to teach them how to work through their communication over sensitive issues where there is a perceived security risk for somebody. That was a long example, but you get the point. So the task-oriented goals and purpose-oriented goals. Questions about that? Agree with what you're saying. We try to have bi-weekly finance. Oh, good. Yeah, because you talked about, Renee, you talked about finances was like your thing. That was your thing. So bi-weekly financial meetings is great. We don't have those. But I'll say for us, how we pay our bills is at the beginning of the year. I'll come up with like we'll sit down and we'll go over our strategy for the year based upon what the new pay raise increase is, based upon what bills we have, what things we have coming up, what we want to do. And I'll say, okay, we want to do this. We want to put some money aside. We want to do save. We want to do investing. We want to do this. And so we'll come up and she'll write it all down on a piece of paper. And then throughout the year, as we go through, as paychecks come in, then that money will be allocated accordingly. And so sometimes she'll come back to me and be like, oh, what about this? You know, are we going to still be doing this with this money, or some new money that came in, blah, blah, blah. So we'll have plans for that. So that's how we kind of manage our finances. Okay. Next up, roles and responsibilities. Now we're talking about roles and responsibilities. In the engineering arena, there's a principle that engineers follow when they're building a product. It's called function over design. And that's when, before an engineer starts designing a product, he or she must first determine its function or what its purpose is. So for example, this chair is an office chair. It's got wheels on it. I can recline back and do office type stuff with it. This chair over here is a sort of just a lounge chair, not a lounge chair. It's kind of like I don't know what kind of chair it is, a dining room chair or some chair that you sit in. It doesn't have the same function as this. This has wheels on it. You can recline back. That you kind of like sit upright. It's comfortable, but it's a completely different design because it has a different function. And so the function over design concept is very prevalent in how God created things. Because when God created you, he created you to accomplish a specific function associated with the common goal that he assigned for mankind. Then he designed you specifically to carry out the roles and responsibilities you were designed to do associated with that common goal that he created for mankind. So male and female roles and responsibilities in filling the earth. You have the man, you have the woman, and the man was designed to impregnate. The woman was designed to receive seed and give birth and push out baby. That's the basic function of the function and design way that God created you. So woven into the fabric of your mind, your body, your soul, and are a unique set of skills, knowledge, abilities, and gifts given to you by God. And so let's look at 3 verses of scripture that support that point. The first is in Romans chapter 12, and you probably read this before, but let me just read it in your hearing. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. And then scripture goes on to list all the different spiritual gifts that we have been given. That's not the point I wanted to make about going through that list, because that's a whole Bible study lesson. But I wanted to point out that we have different gifts according to the grace he has given us. He's given us a measure of grace to operate in these gifts. He echoes that same point in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And it says, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but the same God works all of them in all men. Now, to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good, for the common good. All of these, all these are the working of one and the same Spirit, and He gives them to each one just as He determines. So that's talking again about how God has different attributes He gives us from the same Spirit, and He gives it to each one of us as He determines that He wants to give it to us, because they are all going to be used for our common good, for our common good. And then lastly, Ephesians 2 and 10, you probably heard this before also, for we are God's handiwork or God's workmanship. I've heard in certain translations, created in Christ Jesus to do, let me not rush past that, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So Paul is saying that if you are in Christ, God has given different people different gifts according to the grace he has given them, and those gifts are for the common good of those who are in Christ. And so your gifts are inextricably tied to the purpose-oriented goals that you are supposed to be out here fulfilling. And there's a perfect example of this, of how He did this in the Old Testament. It was in Exodus when God was sending His instructions down to Moses for him to build the tabernacle, the great tabernacle that eventually got built. He was telling Moses, this is how I want the tabernacle built. And He was going to give them instructions. And so He says in Exodus 31, then the Lord said to Moses, see, I have chosen Beazal, the son of Uri, son of of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engrave in all kinds of art. Moreover, I have appointed Oholiab, the son of Ahishamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you. And He talked about the things he wanted him to make. So He has given people specific skills to do specific things for the people, for the kingdom, and to build His tabernacle. And so why is this important for us to understand? Because some people, they don't know what they're supposed to do in life. This was me. My backstory is that I guess it is used to. I was going to be a fashion designer. That's what I went to school for. When I was in 8th grade, she was a seamstress, and she did a fashion show, and she sewed together her outfit that she wore to the fashion show that she produced. She made all the clothes, but she didn't have anything to wear. She was like, oh, I got to wear something. So she made her outfit in 30 minutes. I was like, oh, I was in 8th grade. I was like, I'm going to be the coolest kid in junior high school. I'm going to make all my clothes the morning of school. So I studied fashion from that point on. And I to the point that that's all I focused on. I went to school to study fashion. I learned how to sew. I made my prom suit, custom prom suit. I made, my friend and I, who was also a fashion designer, we did a fashion show at Hampton. We did all the things fashion. Graduated from school, didn't even look for a job. Went to 4 years of school, didn't even apply for an interview or a job anywhere, because I started my fashion business. I started my fashion business in May. I was retired by August the same year, 3 months of my fashion career. My fashion career started in 8th grade, but what I realized is that I liked the idea of fashion, but I didn't like the work. I didn't like sitting at home and doing all the sewing. It wasn't me. So I stopped that business. So then I tried 7 other businesses from the age of like 21 to 23 and failed at all of them. every last one of them failed at it. And I was like, okay, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life now, because my entire life from eighth grade up through college, I was going to be a fashion designer, and I'm not that now. And the other 7 businesses that I tried didn't work. So I don't know what I'm going to do. So let me just shut up and sit down and let you tell me what it is that you want me to do. Because clearly, my idea of what my life is going to be is wrong. And that was me. I did not know what I was supposed to do in life. I eventually found out later. But I did not know that about this whole goal thing, that there was something God really wanted me to do. And another reason why is because why this is important for you to understand is because some people do not have confidence in themselves. They second guess themselves a lot. They have a track record of bad decisions, of poor decision making. Some of the things that they've struggled with in terms of them trying to do things have left them with a lack of ability to, like, oh, I don't really feel confident in the way I move. So let me just chill, or let me ask for confirmation, or let me try to get somebody to tell me what it is they want me to do, because I'm not really comfortable in making in the confidence that I have built up in myself so far. When I was working with millennials, that was a lot of, especially with the young men. That was a lot. I saw that a lot. The young men were, when I say young men, I'm talking about mid to late 20s. They were struggling with the confidence that they had in themselves. Now, I mean, granted, I mean, that's the area where, that's the phase of life when you try out everything and you try to figure it out. Like I said, I went through that stage myself. So you don't have confidence in yourself, and so it's hard to understand that there's something that you're supposed to do, and your pursuit of that is what it is that you should be grinding toward. And then the third reason is because some people don't believe in themselves. Now, the difference between not having confidence in yourself and not believing in yourself, it's a slight difference, but it's big enough to make a big difference. Is that belief, not believing in yourself, you don't have any belief that at all of who you are as a person. Your self worth and self value is diminished. Not having confidence in yourself is just that you're second guessing your decisions and you don't know what it is, but you believe that, okay, I'm going to figure it out eventually. I'm like I knew I was going to figure it out eventually. I knew I was going to get to where I needed to be, but I didn't have a lot of confidence in my decision making. But I believed in myself. There are some people that don't have a belief in themselves, and those are the people who don't have any kind of hope, and they don't have any kind of desire to thrive, because they just have this despair in life because of whatever life situations they've gone through. They're kind of despondent, and they do things that are sabotaging themselves. So let me just encourage those of you who are listening, that if that is you, God does have a purpose and a plan for you. It has a hope, an end, and a future, and it is a good plan. So please understand and know that even though you don't know it now, stay locked in with who God is calling you to be, is pushing you to be, the direction that He's leading you, and then God will reveal Himself to you over time. So be encouraged that there is something that God actually has specifically for you to do, and He's waiting on you to go through these training ground steps so He can prepare, so you can be prepared. So when it's time for you to do it, you'll see and understand it. Just like it happened to me. I did not understand what it is I wanted to do until Bernie mentioned to me about doing the boot camp, that I had a dream that I had years ago. And it was all of a sudden, it was like a light came on, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. That's what we're going to be doing. Not even having any background of training in relationships at all. Like I said, I went to school for fashion. And how am I up here talking about relationships? That's how God moves, and when He wants you to move you in a direction that He's designed and predetermined for you to go, like Ephesians chapter 2 says. So just be encouraged if you're struggling with the non-belief. But those things, when you are going through them, those things carry into your marriage, and they kind of affect your marriage if you don't have that belief, or if you don't know what you're doing. And so you do have a purpose, and I do want to encourage you to continue to pursue that. There was this beautiful story that I had about a client of mine. She was in law enforcement, and she was trying to determine what it is that she wanted to do regarding her relationship. She was with somebody, and they've been together for like 5 years or something, and he was talking about marriage, but he wasn't pulling the trigger. And so she was like, should I leave? Should I not? And she was such a beautiful soul because um, she was so honest and genuine in who she was and how she showed up in that relationship and in other spaces. And through my discussion with her, I was able to see and understand how God was moving in her life and the things that she was doing, and the way that God was showing up, and the way that God was creating her to be a great helpmate style. And I'm talking about not a helpmate in the terms of you got to do all the work, but she was built as someone that really wants to get in there and help, and she wants to help people. She wants to see the good out of people. She wants to pull the good out of people and see how she can help that person build and do better things. She had a very, very beautiful soul. And through all that, I was able to identify for her how God had moved in her life and how God was giving her direction into the direction that she should be going because of all of the doors that were closed and then the doors that were open and the people that were advocating for her. I was like, God is funneling you through a channel that it's very clear that you should be going through. So it was like a light bulb moment for her. And I said, now through that, does he fit into that picture for you? Is he the type of person that will cultivate this person that you are discovering that yourself to be? Do you have confidence in him being able to take this vessel that you are and allow you to be your best version, your best self, and create a platform for where you can be who you are? Or is it, or do you feel like you're having to push him to make the basic bare minimum assertions towards you that this relationship is going to be something that's going to be of growth and long term? And so the answer was obvious, but I don't know where they are in their relationship. I do actually know where they are in their relationship right now, but the answer was obvious, and I won't share what happened, but yeah, but that's a perfect example of somebody that didn't know who they were, and they struggled with like trying to find that out. But then once they got a very clear picture of it, then they were able to see what it is that they should be doing. All right, so let's talk about marital roles and responsibilities. So before you get married, though, God has a purpose for you, as we discussed already. And so this is how this all works out. You have the male and the female. This is before you get married. This is y'all single folks. You have your goal. The male has his purpose and his goal, the thing that God put in him to do, irregardless of who he's with. And the woman, the female, she has her own individual purpose and goal, the thing that God put in her to do, regardless of who she's with. Then you have the different roles and responsibilities that they carry out that fulfill that purpose and that goal, separate and apart from who they are as a couple. They don't even know each other yet. Then God has given you, as we mentioned in scripture, specific knowledge, skills, abilities, and gifts. And he's designed you specifically to carry out the role to fulfill the goal that he has assigned you to do. And you're doing that individually as single individuals at first. And you're walking in that. Some people are doing it longer than others. Some people are working their way through it. And then all of a sudden she started looking good. He started looking handsome. He started talking right. He started getting himself together. And lo and behold, y'all get married. So now what you have is two individuals who are fully single and fully whole. Well, let's not say that they're fully whole. I'll just say they're fully single with a full set of purposes and goals and roles and responsibilities, gifts and skills and knowledges and abilities, and all those things. They're all combined into one group. Now, that's how it looks. You have all these different purposes and roles and responsibilities. And some marriages look like this. They everything fits wonderfully. But marriage, as you know, can be complicated. And why is it complicated? Marriage is complicated because you're trying to establish order in an organizationally structured marriage that includes individual purposes and goals, individual roles and responsibilities, and multiple knowledge, skills, abilities, and gifts. And that is difficult. Um, and some because some couples they do not know, or I have a typo in there. They do not know what their goal is. Some people are like when I got married, I did not know what my goal was. I was still in that stage of I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just chill. Oh, by the way, Bernie, let's get married. So some people don't know what their goal is, and so when you have all these different skills, and Bernie has different skills, and I have different skills, and you're trying to make all that stuff fit into an organizationally structured marriage, that's difficult. And also some of you do not know how to obtain the goal. How do you find out what your goal is? How do you find out what that goal for your life is, or what your goal for your purpose, your marriage is? I used to hear a lot when I would talk to couples or people who were dating or engaged. Like, so what are y'all gonna do? What's the purpose of your marriage? What are y'all gonna be doing together? Well, yeah, we're just gonna, love on each other, take vacations, and just, be happy. Okay, all right, that's cool. Yeah, okay, so yeah, and then what? Like you all are getting married. Like, are y'all gonna be, do you have a purpose that you're trying to accomplish? Um, yeah, we're gonna, we want to have kids, and we want to take care of the kids, and we want to be, have a good. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, the kids are good, great. Okay, but what are y'all, what are y'all doing? I don't know what you mean. It's like they didn't have any concept that their marriage and their relationship had some manner of um, purpose that they needed to accomplish. So that is one of the things that they struggle with. And then lastly, people do not know how to obtain it when both people's roles, knowledge, skills, abilities, and gifts are valued and validated. Um, when you are in a relationship and let's say one of the roles and one of the gifts that you have, one of the skills you have is looked at as something that that doesn't need to be here. I don't really like that anyway. I was hoping you would get rid of that. I'm not really feeling you and how you like to plan. You're too detailed with your plans, and I'm more of like a just play it by ear kind of dude. And this is actually getting on my nerves. So just chill. I mean, I don't really care. It's whatever. But you feel very very strongly about planning because without planning, this is what without planning, nothing ever will get accomplished. Everything will just be fly by night, and then that's bucking up against that role of emotional security. You need some stability for that emotional security. You need some plan, some structure, some direction for that relational security. So they knocking up against something that you feel like you're settling for versus a compromise, and it's causing problems. I'm not talking about something hypothetically. I'm talking about things that have happened in real life. Yeah. So if things that you bring to the table, if you will, and that's a very popular saying, if they're not valued or validated, then that's a problem, and it starts to look a little bit something like this. You may have a whole bunch of her purposes and her goals, her skills, her roles and responsibilities. Big energy given toward those, but his knowledge, his skills, his ability, yeah, we really don't need those right now because we're doing this. We can that's kind of outside of us. You can do that with your business or do that at work, but inside our marriage, the stuff the stuff that you're bringing to the marriage that you valued highly before, we really don't need that. And that happens a lot in marriages, and that's that trying to bring all that stuff under order. Or you have something that looks like this. You have his role, his responsibilities, his purpose, his goal, his knowledge. Big energy, big energy given towards that. I'm all here doing things. I'm bringing in this. I'm bringing in that. I have these responsibilities, and this is where I think we should go, and this is what I think we should do, and this is how we should do it. And you're like, but I have some input. I want to have some say. I want to make some decisions. I want to be involved in the decision. I don't want you just to notify me of what we're doing. Let's discuss it so that I can have input and weigh in and provide my desires of actually how I can make this thing better. But if that is not valued or appreciated, that's a big problem. That goes to that relational security. Somebody feeling like they're a little bit on the outs. So what I wanted to say is that marriage has a purpose. And let me read another excerpt from my book that talked about, page 62, that talked about the purpose that your marriage has. So this is from page 62. It says, in general, marriage has a purpose too. And God designed it to have a man and a woman to carry out its purpose. Your roles and responsibilities in a marriage are first determined by your purpose, what God created you to do, and then by how he designed you to carry it out. Let me read that again. Your roles and your responsibilities in a marriage are first determined by your purpose. That is the purpose of your marriage. And then what God created you to do. And what God created you to do, and then by how he designed you to carry it out. While each marriage is different, based upon the skills, abilities, and gifts you have, the purpose of your marriage is directly tied to God's filling, subduing, and ruling agenda. And so a good example of that is my favorite couple in the Bible, and I mentioned last week, Priscilla and Aquila. Priscilla and Aquila were discussed in Acts 18 primarily. They were mentioned elsewhere throughout the Bible. But when Paul was on one of his missions trips, he was going throughout one of the towns. And when he came into this one town, I think it was in Galatia, he stayed with Priscilla and Aquila. And they took care of him and, hosted him there. He was making tents. That's when Paul was a tent maker. He was making tents by day and then preaching in the synagogue at night. And they cared for him and served him and did all the things. Then Paul left and he went to Ephesus, and Priscilla and Aquila went with him. And they did the same thing there. They served him and helped him a lot in all the things that he was doing. Then Paul left and went to another town, another city, but Priscilla and Aquila stayed in Ephesus. And then along comes Apollos. Apollos was a preacher, solid preacher in the word. Not the word in the Bible, because the Bible wasn't written then. But he was preaching about the Jesus Christ, he was preaching about Jesus Christ, but he didn't know anything about the Holy Spirit. He didn't know anything about that and stuff that Paul was preaching about. So Priscilla and Aquila, welcomed him, Apollos, into their home, and they tended to him and served him and did all the things. And they taught him about the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit dwells and all the things that Paul was teaching. So then Apollos left there. He went to another town. He was killing them, slaying them. He was preaching about Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. And he was so renowned in the word that he became popular by the preaching and the way he was able to explain to the Jews all the details of the Holy Spirit and Jesus and all that stuff. And they also, and the scripture also talks about how Priscilla and Aquila did hosting other people in their house, hosting other ministers in their houses, hosting churches in their houses. And what that said to me was that Priscilla and Aquila, their purpose was to be a servant to the man of God. Be a servant to the man of God. That was their purpose. Yeah, I don't even know what their other jobs were during the day, but that's what their purpose was. That was a purpose for their marriage. They probably had different roles and responsibilities that led toward that. It doesn't really go into it, but that's what I was able to take from that message, that there's something that they were supposed to be doing, and they did it everywhere they went. That's where they were. Everywhere they went, that's what they did. And wherever they were, that's what they did. And that's what I love about what Priscilla and Aquila represent. And that represents you as well. Everybody who has a marriage has specific a purpose and a goal and roles and responsibilities that came from when they were single, and knowledge, skills, and abilities that came when they were single. And the difficulty and the trouble and the practice of marriage is trying to work all that stuff out and try to make all that stuff fit in a organized way so that there's a common goal and that your different roles and responsibilities lead toward that goal. Um, so next, let's talk about, and wrapping up, um, men's roles versus women's roles. And um, this was a argument that has been fully addressed throughout social media and on the internet over the last several years. I'm glad it's kind of died down, but I wanted to address it because in the book I did address it, and I wanted to clarify what in the current nomenclature, how it's men's roles and women's roles are used versus how in the book I talk about how God looks at your roles. Um, to me, the idea of women's roles and men's roles is a misguided argument. It's misguided because it's too limiting. It's only focusing on the roles that you have in your marriage. But as you can see, the entire scope of your marriage cascades down from the common goal, which is to fill, subdue, and rule. I told you we're going to be talking about that a lot. The common goal that God gave mankind to fill, subdue, and rule. The purpose of your marriage, like Priscilla and Aquila, like what me and Bernie are doing, this is our purpose, and every marriage has a purpose that God has given them to do. Then you have the roles and responsibilities that fulfill that purpose, and then you have the different multiple knowledge bases, the multiple skill sets that each person have, the multiple abilities and the multiple gifts that each person has in order to fulfill the purpose of that marriage. And so when you look at the concept or the notion of, well, the man's role is to lead and to provide, and the woman's role is to, help and to cook and to clean and do what all those other things that men say that women should be doing. That is such a narrow scope. You have a very small mind and limited perspective of what marriage is and the roles that are responsible that are involved in that. You cannot just narrow down your role and responsibilities when you have all of this, the goals, the ability, the skills, the knowledge, all these things that are factors into it. And so that's when we start talking about leadership in marriage, which is the title of this chapter. Leadership in marriage. When people talk about leadership in marriage, and I provided the definition of marriage at the top right corner so that you can see what the definition is and how, when you look at leadership in marriage and how I'm gonna break this down and what it is. When people start talking about leadership in marriage, based on the common goal, which is to fill, subdue, and rule, like, what is the purpose of your marriage? These are the things you need to consider and factor in when you are looking at leadership in marriage. What is the purpose of your marriage? Men need to lead in discovering, determining, or discerning what the purpose of your marriage is. Now, that's my opinion. I think there's scripture that supports that when Adam was created first, he was given all the things to do by God, and then Eve came on scene next, and Adam's responsibility was to instruct her in all those things. And where they went wrong was when he did not step in and take over. When the devil was sitting there talking to both of them, he let Eve go ahead and have that conversation with the enemy, and she bit the fruit, and then he bit it, and then sin entered into the world. So what happened after that was God then restructured the order. He said, okay, because Eve, you went ahead and started leading because you bit the fruit first, and then Adam followed you. I'm going to now put enmity between you and the serpent. I'm now going to put a permanent structure of man being the head over the woman. Before, it was like this. It was like this. The leader was God. It was the common goal, God, and then Adam and Eve, y'all are supposed to do the things. But then he put man over an authority over the woman. I'm saying that to say that when you were talking about leading, it is the man's job in the beginning of the marriage to discover, determine, to lead in discovering, determining, and discerning what that purpose is in the marriage. For my marriage, Bernie was the one who triggered me to be like, oh, that dream that I had was what we should be doing. So let's go do that. So now it's like, okay, now how are we going to do that? And then we had a mutual discussion about how we're going to go about doing the thing that it is that we ultimately did. But I was leading that discussion. It doesn't mean her input was irrelevant and it didn't take into consideration that, but it is something that I was leading and doing. And so I talked about this with other couples. When you propose and when a man proposes, you're proposing the kind of life that you will create for your family. So that's what a proposal is. When you say, "Will you marry me?" Based upon the history that we have, I'm proposing that we're going to have this type of life together. Will you marry me and enter into this life with me? Oh, yes, I will. But if a woman feels like, nah, you're questionable, your leadership is questionable, your character is questionable, your communication is suspect, you still got a whole bunch of things, straggling around that you ain't got rid of yet. No, I'm not trying to sign up for that. Um, so that proposal is the proffer of a man to say, I'm submitting this life I have as an off as something that to offer to you, as something that you can join me with. So I'm saying all that to say that the purpose, I believe, needs to be initiated and led by the man. Um, I'm not giving fundamental, solid, hard structure on that, but let me know, because some women like to propose to men. They like to do the proposing now. That's crazy. Bernie and I did a whole review of a episode of of a series of when the women proposed to the men and they got married on the same day. Some women like to do that. I'm not a proponent of it. I just think it's just I'm not even saying I'm old school. I just don't agree with it. I just don't agree with it because I think when you start leading in that way, then you have to be responsible for leading the entire marriage, and it's just not, to me, designed for it to operate that way. But when you're proposing, okay, no, what's my next question? What is a woman supposed to help you with? Oh yeah, what is a woman supposed to help you with? If she's supposed to be a helpmate, what's she helping you with? If you're not figuring out the purpose of your marriage, if you don't provide that servant, then what is she going to help you do? And that's one of the things that Bernie and I brought up a lot. Like if a man's supposed to lead, what is she following? What is she helping you lead? And that's one of the things that when you start talking about the purpose of your marriage, that's one of the things that you need to have in shape, or at least something that you're discerning, you're discussing, you're discovering. We didn't figure ours out till year 3, so it's not something that you have to have right away. But some people do have it right away. But some people get married because you've identified what that purpose is. Well, that's good. You should do that, and I'm in agreement with that. Next question is, what is the process of influencing the movement of your family towards that purpose? That basically is the definition of leadership. There's a process of influencing the movement of a group toward a common goal. Do you have a process? Is that process repeatable? And or are you just winging it? Do you have something that you're looking for to do consistently, or are you just out here just flinging it? Do you know how to influence, or is your influence, does it look like a dictate, or does it look like a mandate? Does it look like this current administration? Does it look like what Machiavelli talked about the different ways you can lead through coercion? The whole book of Machiavelli is written in the 1500s, is a book about how you lead and control and manipulate and gain power through coercion and all various nefarious means. That's what Machiavelli's book about. What happens when what worked on the other girl doesn't work on your wife? Like, I've seen that a lot. You thought that your way of influencing her to come to your way of thinking, or to do these things, or to stop doing these things. You're using old ways on old females, and that's not working on your wife, and you don't know what to do. Is your process flexible enough to change, or do you have to achieve that predetermined goal no matter what? Oh, we talked about this with a couple about how once he sets a goal, the goal is the goal. There's no relenting, there's no giving back, there's no curtailing. It's what you got to do. And when the goal wasn't working, it was a double down. And even though chaos and bedlam was ensuing, the goal was the goal, and it was like a bull in a china shop to try to drag drag the couple through that goal to get to the end, to the point when they got to the end, they didn't want to be married no more. So I'm like, was the goal worth it? Could you have just been more flexible, and you probably would have stayed married? You probably would have been happy in your marriage. But now your child's you the last what 18 years, 19 years, and you've been through this process. You pressed it out, and now the result of this goal that you pressed your way through is a divorce. Yeah. Um, Next question is, how do you manage the multitude? Oh, I'm sorry, Renee. You said something. We wing it sometimes with a touch of structure. Look, as long as both of y'all have a plan to wing it and structure. No, look, if y'all out here driving this RV, y'all not winging that. That's especially as big as y'all's RV is. That ain't a wing. That's we're going to this location. Do they have a spot big enough for us? Where the gas spots at? Where we staying overnight? Do they got hookups? Do they got water? Do they got electricity? How long are we going to stay? How long is the drive? Where are we stopping in the interim? Yeah, there's some structure to that. You may wing it after you arrive at the place, but you are Renee. You got a lot of structure up in there. That's my RV buddy, Renee, and her husband James. Um, oh, how do you manage the multitude? How do you manage the multiple knowledge bases, skill sets, abilities, gifts, and gifts in your marriage? Good gracious. Do you know how to assess them? Do you know how to assess skill sets? Do you know how to look at someone's capabilities and determine if that's a valuable asset or not, or determine how to use that? That's a skill in and of itself. Do you know what they are, or are you making assumptions or projections? Um, are you hoping that there's something that they're not? Did you marry a project? Did you marry somebody who is a project that you expect to fix and solve and get to do whatever it is you want by this date, and if not, there's a problem? Whew. How do you feel about the presence of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you don't like, that you don't value, or you don't think are good? Um, do you punish that person for having those capabilities that you don't like? And I've seen that. There's a couple that's going through a separation, that's separated, going through a divorce because one person one person did not like who their spouse became, and they never shared it. Yeah, okay, I'm trying to be careful. They didn't like who their spouse became, and they never shared it so that they can correct it. They just started the conversation. They started the corrective conversation with, I want a divorce. You had some things that you didn't like, but you punished that person. And when I talk about punish, I'm not talking about putting a child in punishment. And I'll talk about punishment later, because we talk about punishment later on in the book. You punish a person when you give them something that they don't want, or you withhold from them something that they do want. And so you are punishing a person for being who you've allowed them to be, and you never addressed it, but you are now saying, I'm divorcing you because of who you are. And then when that person tried to change, you were like, it's too late. Ah, that don't hurt. That one hurt. Um, if your purpose requires a knowledge, skill, ability, and grace neither one of you have, how do you still move forward? And And I don't know is not a sufficient answer. How do you move forward when you both don't have the skills required to handle the situation that's presented to you? Woo! Good God. Oh my goodness. That I mean, there's so much in that. And there's so many people in that. I was in that. Like I said, I did not know what I was doing after a certain period of time, but I was winging it, trying to figure it out as I went along until I had to go back to school to get the information that I needed to know how to move forward. But what do, sir, husband, leader? What do you do when you are at the impasse, when you don't have the skills to move forward? What do you do? And I don't know is not a sufficient answer because guess what? You're going to move forward anyway. And so you're going to do something. You just, even if you don't know what you're going to do, something is going to get done. You just don't have a plan for it. And so based on the information above, what are your roles and responsibilities and what are theirs? What are the roles and responsibilities that you've identified for all the things above? Are they equitably distributed to meet that purpose, the purpose of your marriage, the purpose for why you got married? Um, are they fair? Are the things that you're deciding that we're going to do together, are they fair to your spouse? Are they fair to you? Are they fair to you? Are you taking too much on than you should? Um, and how do you know if they're fair? If you think that they're fair, but your spouse thinks that they're not fair, and they're telling you that it's wrong, and they're telling you that it's not, their load is too heavy, and you dismiss it. Are you dismissive? Are you dismissive about you'll get over it? I saw my mother do it. I work, I do all these things, and this is your role. But it's not fair, and you disregard the unfair conversation. And how do you know that you're right? How do you know that you're wrong? Do you have a change management process for what happens if things are not in balance, or there's inequity on either side of the equation? If there's inequity on her end or your end, what if you discover you are better than her at something she's responsible for? What do you do to address that? Do you just jump in and take it over? Do you like micromanage? Do you tell her what to do? Do you passive aggressively snipe at her and complain about it, or do you sit down, have a conversation with her? Do you teach her? Do you coach her? Like what do you do? What do you do? Um, uh, 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 what's my next one? Oh, and vice versa. What if she discovers that she's better at something than you? Like, what is your acceptance level for her to come to you with something that she's telling you that you're wrong at, or telling you that you're not good at, or she's telling you that she's better than you at, or she's telling you that I want to take this over? I mean, is she doing it what if she's doing it in a supportive, loving way? How do you take that? What if she's doing it in a nasty, petty, passive aggressive, or overly aggressive way? How do you manage that? How do you deal with that? Whew, here's some good stuff. Do you listen to her opinion and factor those opinions into your decisions? Into your decisions, not your decision making. There's a difference. We had a client one time that was getting all the information from their spouse, and he was making the decision that never went in her direction. That never did what it is that she recommended. And when they met with us, his thing was like, I've taken that into consideration in my decision making. I've taken your input into consideration in your decision making, and I've decided to go this way. I did listen to you. I heard what you said. I've considered that in my decision, and then we're going this way. And it became the style, the pattern, the norm, that the decisions rarely included what she wanted to do. So his decision making was inclusive and was listening to her thought and input, but his decisions rarely had the impact of that. Now, was it because she doesn't know what she's talking about and her decisions have no value, or was it that he was just narcissistic and wanted everything done his way, and he can use the basis of, as the man, I'm the head and the leader, so therefore I have to take consideration who you are and what it is that you're saying into my decisions, but I'm not obligated to do what it is that you're recommending because I'm the man and I'm the head and I'm the one responsible. Whew. Is the suitable help you want her to provide relegated to just stuff that you don't want to do? Is she the suitable helper for you for all the things that you just don't feel like doing? I read an article yesterday or this morning. It was called weaponizing incompetence. When somebody, and it talked about how men, when they don't like doing something or don't want to do something, cleaning, cooking, menial tasks, something that they think the woman is responsible for doing, they claim ignorance. I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at that. Go to the store, I don't know how to pick out fruit. I don't I don't understand how to do that. I don't know how to do that. And then they weaponize the ignorance and the incompetence instead of like learning how to do it. Ooh, that is something. Yeah. So that's the thing. So when people talk about leadership in marriage, this is the entire scope of leadership in marriage. This is what leadership is in marriage. Do you have the capacity, the capability to manage all of these different variables? Are you equipped to be able to understand her assets, her goals, her knowledge, her skills, and utilize that for the benefit of your marriage, the purpose, and her happiness and your happiness? Do you know how to manage all these things? So when men be talking about my role is this and your role is that, son, you are ill-equipped. You are not thinking deep enough, because this is the full scope of it. Everything here, the roles, responsibilities, the ability to influence, the processes that you have to develop in order to manage the household smoothly. And it's not something that is relegated to your wife. You have to be involved in creating that process, that structure. Otherwise, she's leading the marriage, and you're just following along. But yet you think that you're providing some type of input because you have a recommendation or a decision, and you make the final decision. This is the full scope of leadership. So when asked the question, before I get to that, there was a couple. This is crazy long. There was a couple that we interviewed in one of our podcasts, and the wife was a very strong, capable woman with a managerial career. So she be bossing things around. She runs things. She gets things done, and she's very competent and capable to do that. And she wants a husband who is a leader, who is strong, who is secure, who is confident, and do all the things. She wants to be a submissive wife and do all the things. Her husband is a creative guy. He's a big person thinker. He's a not big person. He's a big idea thinker. He has big grandiose ideas. All the details and the minutia, not too keen on. Not a problem. It's not bad. It's just that that's not his thing. And so when she's asking questions, she's asking from the perspective of, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about this? Because she can see the whole sequence of things and how they all need to flow together. He's like, yeah, we just need to go do this and go here and put that together and put that. But how are we going to do that? We got to do this, that, and the third. And so that began to boil up a bunch of conflict in their marriage. And they had a couple conversations about the D word, but they quickly pulled back from that, and we're having discussions about okay, how can we better make this thing work? How can we work together as friends? And they on their own were able to get to a place where they were like, okay, we're gonna figure this thing out. And when we were having a podcast, he asked a question. He was like, how could I can't remember the exact question that he asked, but he was asking the question about like how he could be a better, know how to manage things better in the house. And I said, because your wife is so skilled and capable, and she be moving things along in a very efficient pace. Your best skill is learning how to deploy your wife. How to deploy your wife. She has mad skills, not taking anything away from him, but I said she has mad skills, knowledge, abilities, and she knows it, and she's wanting to use them, but you're not giving her anything to do with it, except for like these ideas that you come up with, where she can address and put together and make happen in short order, and then she's waiting on you to come up with another idea. So your best skill is to learn how to deploy your wife and get her to understand all the different skills, knowledges, abilities, and gifts she has, and then make all that stuff work out for the betterment and for the purpose of your marriage. So the question that comes up a lot is should women lead in a marriage? And I talked about this in my book because this was a very hot topic back in the day. Should women be leaders in marriages? And I outlined these points now outlined here. Leadership is, as I mentioned before, leadership is not person specific. It's not relegated to the man or a woman. Leadership, period, is not relegated to a man or a woman. It's not person specific. Leadership is neither authority. If a man is supposed to be the head of the household, he has been delegated the authority, but it doesn't mean that he is the leader. And it doesn't mean he knows how to lead. Just because the man is the person who God said, you're the leader, doesn't mean that he's good at it or he knows how to do it or he's actually doing it. I've seen men abdicate their leadership because they did not know. Like I talked about last week, I met that couple at our boot camp, and he said he didn't know how to lead. So his wife apparently was leading everything. Um, so if a woman can influence the movement of a marriage towards the purpose, so you got all these different purposes inside this ring, all these different things that you're supposed to do. Not all the different purposes, but all these different skills, abilities, knowledges, and so forth, and the roles and responsibilities. If she can influence all of that stuff to be channeled toward the direction of the goal or the purpose of that marriage, and if a woman has the knowledge and skills, abilities to help carry out that purpose, then absolutely a woman should provide leadership in a marriage, but the husband is the one God holds responsible for it all. Adam cannot get around, uh, um, where art thou, Adam? Where are you? We're hiding because we naked. Who told you was naked? This woman that you gave me, blaming it on the woman. You cannot get around the responsibility as a husband that you have by God as a leader. It wasn't sin until Adam ate the apple. Eve ate the apple, no sin. Adam ate the apple, sin entered the world. They realized they were naked. The when you look at I'm not calling a woman a child, but I'm making the analogy because it's perfect. When you think about a child, um, if a child is driving a car, driving their parent's car, and the child runs a red light and slams into another car, um, whose fault is that? That's the child's fault. You ran a red light. Who's responsible? Mom and dad's who's on that insurance policy. Yeah, you're responsible for that. If a child goes into a store and breaks a vase, whose fault is that? That child for being careless? Who's responsible? That parent got paid for that vase. Not paralleling a parent to a child, but paralleling the responsibility versus the person who's doing the action. If a marriage is going well, or is being sustained very well, and the woman is doing a lot of the credit. God is like, okay, I'm gonna deal with the husband accordingly. If a marriage is going badly, and a woman is responsible for the tumultuous downfall of that marriage, then God is like, okay, I'm gonna deal with the husband accordingly. It doesn't matter which direction the marriage is going, or which direction, or who's leading. It's the husband who's responsible for it all. So does a woman have the skills to lead? Absolutely. But it's that husband who is responsible for it all. So what are your thoughts? Do you feel like leadership in marriage is strictly for men, or you think women should be leaders too? I think I know the answer, but I'm throwing this out there for your consideration. So that's it for today. That was a lot. I didn't think this was going to go that long. So next week, we're going to talk about how to find out the common goal in your marriage. That's a whole process. That is a whole process. Finding out the common goal in your marriage is a thing. And I wanted to write about it because when I was trying to find out my common goal, I did not know I was going through a process until years after I was out of the process, out of at least that process. So I wanted to give couples the inclination and the understanding about, hey, this is what going through that process looks like. So gear up, be prepared, and that way you'll know if you're in that process right now and how to look for the signals and signs for what to do within while you're in that process. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you all, Jazz, Renee, for joining me. I'm trying to keep these things to an hour, but I just be talking. And so hopefully it's beneficial for y'all. Please leave a chat. Please leave a like, share. If you know somebody. Okay, I'm going to find a different way to play music next week because these ads on YouTube be tripping. If you know somebody that is going through some difficulty in their marriage, please share this with them, because we're out here trying to help couples figure all these things out in marriage. On my last point, I meant to mention this earlier on. Make sure that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world now. Government's going straight crazy, straight bananas. Night, Renee. Government's going straight crazy, straight bananas. Um, Make sure you tap in with your family, with your close friends, your relatives, and make sure you get prepared for the unknown, because what we see very clearly is that every week, seemingly every day, there's something that is unexpected that happens. And with the world in a frenzy and uproar about what is what is going on, and then the presence of AI and all the things, there are so many things that could happen that we could just not be prepared for, or we just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I would have never thought when Bernie went out of town, she went on vacation with her sisters, that DC would be occupied by the federal government. Would have never thought that. But now, when she came back, DC is occupied, and now they're talking about occupying other cities. And the governors are pushing against that. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on now. Make sure you tap in with your families. Make sure you tap in with your friends, with your coworkers, people who you're tight with, because we want to make sure that everybody that we care about is in a safe space. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening in the near future. I don't know if you can feel the powder keg of these things blowing up, or starting to bubble up. Rather, it's not blowing up, but starting to bubble up. Um, um, Bernie and I follow some preachers online, and they are all prophesying about things that are going to be taking place at the coming soon. I'm not getting into all that because I'm not a prophet, but I wanted to share this with you all to be like, yo, if you all got some family members that you need to tap in with, make sure you tap in with them. And if you got any beefs between you and your spouse, make sure you check them. Make sure you get some help and get some help to resolve them, because you do not want to be at odds and fighting one another when the world is fighting against you. You don't want to be. You want to find peace. If you need help with that, please reach out to me, and we can work something out. Like I said, Bernie and I still do individual consulting, and we're creating a community here where couples can grow and learn together in a safe space, in a safe system, so that we can, help one another and be and operate within our purpose. All right, you all. That's it for me. I bid y'all farewell and a good